Uvla Loeta. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the AlaskaCAN conference.
Good morning.
We are just letting people in and entering this beautiful space. I don't know about you, it's a beautiful day in Anchorage. So we're happy to have everyone with us. So just hold tight as we get folks entered and we'll get rolling. Good morning, everyone. For those who are just joining us, we're just giving a few minutes and letting folks into the room. We're always wanting to make sure we don't have any good old Zoom bombers, so we're just watching intentionally who our names that are coming in are registrants. So everyone just hang tight and we'll get started soon. We want to wish everyone a great morning and so glad you are here with us for the AlaskaCAN conference. Maybe I'll just remind folks to make sure you're muted. I know we're going to have some housekeeping. Barbara is going to give us some housekeeping in a few minutes, but just a quick reminder to watch that mute. But we love it if cameras can be off. We also understand bandwidth issues across Alaska, so we understand when cameras have to be off as well. And I know it's 8:31. We have about 44 participants, but people are coming in pretty regularly. So we'll wait just a few more minutes before we get started. All right. I was gonna see, we're at 47. I was gonna wait and see if we could get to 50 before we got started this morning. Great to see faces, great to see names. Thanks for using the side chat. I know we're not in person, but at least it gives us a little bit of opportunity to chat, at least in the side chat bar. We're really hoping that next year we'll be back in person, and we'll get a lot of hugs and a lot of smiles to make up for these past couple years that we've all been in a virtual space. Well, we're at 49. Barbara, what do you think? Should I get started?
Yeah, I think so.
Get rolling. All right. All right. Uvla lotak, everyone. That's our, we always enjoy what we call in Barrow and on the North Slope, our Inupiaq word of the day. So I'm channeling some of my elders and home. I miss home. So uvla lotak, everyone. Good morning. Go ahead, and if you know the Alaska Native word for good morning from your region, you can go ahead and put it in the chat bar. Pakalarefsi, uvanga narak, tinektun sinaka Dr. Pearl Kion Brower, ukpiakaving miurunga, savaktunga nuna dinainamon, savaktunga University of Alaska me, Senior Advisor for Alaska Native Success, Institutional Diversity, and Student Engagement Lu. So just welcome everyone. Pakalarefsi means welcome. Welcome to this space. My Inupiaq name is Nagayak, but many of you know me, and you know me much better as Pearl. And I'm really excited to be with you here this morning. I work by day for the University of Alaska, and I'm the Senior Advisor for Alaska Native Success, Institutional Diversity, and Student Engagement. But I also have the privilege of serving on the AlaskaCAN Board of Directors. I'm one of, if we think of it in a different way, I'm one of the elders on that group. I've been with the group since inception, so for many, many years. And I am really pleased to be the conference co-chair, along with my co-chair, Barbara Monger, who I'm going to turn it over to in just a moment, but we want to give a quick land acknowledgement. So I said, so I work on the lands of the Dena'ina. I'm on Zoom today from Anchorage, but I want to just acknowledge that I work on these ancestral lands of the Dena'ina people, and their stewardship of this land over thousands of years allows me to call this place home. But I acknowledge the rich cultural heritage of all Alaska Native people across this great land we call Alaska today. And while my feet stand on the traditional lands of the Dena'ina, my heart and mind give gratitude to all of our Alaska Native peoples upon whose land all of our universities and campuses reside, and beyond, as well as on whose land all of our regions for AlaskaCAN are connected. So great opportunity to give thanks to the place that we are at and the peoples who have taken care of this land from time immemorial. And if you can, share in the chat bar where you are calling in today and give your land acknowledgement. It's always just a great way to ground ourselves as we move forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Barbara, who's going to take us into our morning. Really happy to have everyone with us. Thank you so much for this commitment of time, and we look forward to engaging over the next few days. Barbara?
Thank you, Pearl. Thank you so much. I want to say good morning to everybody and welcome to our 2022 AlaskaCAN conference. I am Barbara, and my day job is as the Mat-Su Reentry Coalition Coordinator, but I'm also a proud member of the AlaskaCAN board, and I'm also the conference committee co-chair. So before we start today, I would like to cover a few housekeeping items. We plan to break into regional breakout groups later this morning. So I would like to ask everyone to change their names to the region and full name according to the WIOA map being displayed right now. So as you see, my name is Anchorage/Mat-Su, and then Barbara Mongar. So if you could all do that, it will make it easier when we break into the breakout groups. I would also like to take a moment to thank our conference committee members. This conference would not have happened if it weren't for this outstanding group of people who volunteered their time to meet and make this event possible. Thank you to Pearl Brower, my co-chair, Dominika Spanonska, Kathy Lecomte, Julie Renfro, Kate Hilbrand, Mark Rosenberry, Shelley Morgan, Crystal Crawford, Janelle Vanessa, Angela Peacock, Emily Ferry, Vincent Villela, Arth Brown III, Alex Tantum, Felicia Swanson, and Casey Alu. Thank you so much. And I apologize if I butchered anybody's last name. I'm really bad with names. I would also like to recognize the AlaskaCAN board members. These individuals are Kate Hilbrand, she's our president. Arth Brown III, he's our vice president, immediate past president. Dr. Pearl Brower, she's our treasurer. Janelle Vanessa, she's our secretary. Dr. Alex Tatum, Crystal Crawford, Angela Peacock, Shelley Morgan, Charles Sika, Suzanne McCarthy, Felicia Swanson, Tiffany Caldu, and Kate Kaluka, I'm sorry, I can't say that name. Alu, sorry about that. I'm terrible with names. And a big thanks goes out to our administrative liaison, Dominika Spanonska. We could not do this without her. She is the glue that holds us all together. Thank you so much, Dominika. So now I would like to turn it over to Emily to introduce our keynote speaker.
Great, thanks so much. Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad to see you. I think we're all here because we believe in that goal of 65 by 2025. And to that end, the Southeast Network and the Association of School Boards, where I work, began looking around this year for programs and initiatives where they were improving outcomes for students when it comes to post-secondary success. And that led us to the work of Dr. Mandy Savitz-Romer, who we'll hear from today. She is the Director of Prevention Science and Practice at the Harvard Grad School of Education. And if you like what you hear, I would highly recommend her books, both Ready, Willing, and Able, and Fulfilling the Promise. So those are two ways to go a little bit deeper. And with that, we'll turn it over to Dr. Savitz-Romer.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Emily. I'm delighted to be with you. And thank you for inviting me to share a little bit about my work today. It is 12:40 in the afternoon here in Boston, very cold day. It's about 19 outside, but no complaints to you all. I'm just really happy to be with you. I'd like to share today a little bit about my work in thinking differently about college and career readiness. It's based on my work, and I appreciate acknowledging that I'm the director of the Prevention Science and Practice program, but I should tell you that up until my grandmother's passing at age 95, she introduced me to everybody in the nursing home as her granddaughter, Mandy, who was a school counselor at Harvard University. So being a school counselor is very much deep in who I am, and I hope as I share my work and some of the research I've done with you today, you'll really see that my goal is not to introduce some scientific research and theory that has no relevance, but really is designed to help you as a state and as an individual and a professional reach your goal of widening access to post-secondary opportunities for the young people that you care about so much. So with that, I'm going to attempt to do some technological work here and share my screen, and hopefully I share with you slides and not my very messy desktop. So just give me one moment. Can you give me 1 second? Start the show, play from start. Let's see, how'd I do?
It's great.
You're seeing the slides. Let me turn my subtitles off. Okay. So hopefully you're seeing just my title slide and not my crazy note. So let me, is that right? You're seeing my title slide? Wonderful. So I just wanted to thank you again. I'd like to give you a little bit of context about my career path and what's led me to engage in this work, because the field of college access is not short on research. There's lots of research, there's lots of websites, resources, programming, curriculum, organizations who are very committed to widening access to college and to post-secondary opportunities. But as folks who are working with students, I would imagine that you're not really looking for more things to fill your time, that your days are plenty full, and that really what I'm hoping I can do today is sort of expose you to some other ways of how you do your work, not new things. And so with that, let me jump in. Let me say a little bit about how I got here as I introduced you to baby Mandy. As a 21-year-old, I began as a high school counselor. Those young women are in their mid-30s right now. So it's sort of funny to see them. But, you know, my mom was a teacher and I was raised primarily by my mom, a single mom, and we played a lot of school at home. I had a chalkboard. I think this was really just her way of getting me to correct her second graders' tests. And so I played a lot of school, but my mother will tell you that when I played school, I lined my dolls and animals up and I asked them what they wanted to be when they grew up, that I was less interested in talking about math and science and more interested in supporting them in their future planning. And so much of my identity was around becoming a school counselor, even from a pretty young age. I was very excited when I got my first job at Brighton High School here in Boston. It's a large traditional urban high school. And I began as a 9th grade counselor with these young women, Tess, Yasmin, and Wanda. And my job was to provide early college awareness. This may not sound all that interesting, given that in this day and age, we know a lot about the importance of early college awareness. But this was in 1994, and there wasn't a lot of research on this. The principal, the head of school at the time, felt like there were too many students who just weren't setting their sights on college. And so I was hired to sort of provide early college awareness and get students excited about post-secondary options. So one of the things that I would do is I would bring all of my 9th graders into our library. It's kind of a library. It was a room, it had books in it. And I did sort of my big, who here wants to go to college? Now, if you've ever done this, you know that when you ask that question, students know the right answer. They put their hands up and they all say they want to go. Like, yes, miss, I want to go to college. Of course, as someone new to the field, I thought this job is going to be pretty easy because they all want to go to college and all I have to do is provide the instrumental and informational support to help them get there. Lo and behold, as you all might predict, that was not the case. I started my year with 350 9th graders, and I probably graduated about 170 of those students 4 years later. What I noticed shortly after exposing them to my very high expectations of going to college in the sort of library was that the same students whose hands were in the air were also not coming to school every day. And they weren't doing their homework. They weren't necessarily engaging in the kinds of behaviors that would put them on a path to that goal of going to college. Importantly, they weren't signing up for some of the enrichment programs. Now, we didn't have a college access network at the time, but we did have Upward Bound and we had Talent Search and other kinds of federal programs. We had Saturdays at local universities for college visits and tours, even for 9th graders, but the students weren't signing up and they weren't going. And as I followed them through to graduation, about 100 and let's say 50 of them graduated. If you know the statistics, particularly of students who come from low-income communities and those who are the first in their family to go to college, you know, about 100 of them pursued college after high school and about 35% of them actually finished. And what happened was over the years, as I stayed as a counselor, many of them would come back and tell me how much they were struggling. They would tell me that for academic reasons, financial reasons, personal or cultural reasons, sometimes all those reasons, they just didn't think it was a fit and they were leaving. And importantly, they would say, you know, miss, no one ever told me, I don't know, insert anything that I had definitely told them, but they maybe just didn't hear or they couldn't take in at the time that I gave it to them. I began to wonder like what I was doing wrong. These students were investing so much of their time and energy. I had a committed head of school. And really, I felt like we were missing something in how we were preparing them. So I left and I did a doctorate in higher ed. I was like, what's going on in higher ed? And as I began to learn, I realized there was a lot about higher ed that if I had known as a counselor, I would have done differently. So I took a few other jobs and eventually landed here at Harvard, where I direct one of our master's programs. And I train school counselors, school social workers, and college access, or any really youth programming folks. People who have an investment in young people, but not necessarily in an academic discipline. And I really got back in touch with my original work as a counselor. And I began to read some of the counseling literature and the developmental psychology literature that, by the way, I had read as part of a counseling degree, but didn't really find myself using it as a counselor, and definitely not in the early college awareness that I was doing. So I set out to do some research on like how it was that the field has grown, college and career readiness. And one of the things that I found was that there was a great amount of attention to information available to students. The field of college access and readiness has grown so much over the past, well, I did this work in the late 90s, so we'll just go with 20 years there to make it simple and have me not feel so old. You know, there are so many organizations, there are so many websites. I mean, you really can find almost any information about college going on the internet, or the Google, as my mother insists on calling it. And I realized that with all of that information out there, it wasn't necessarily translating for so many young people into fostering a belief that they could and should go on to college or some post-secondary credential. And so I dug into what we were missing in these programs. And particularly a lot of these programs focused on juniors and seniors. And I knew from my work that some of my ninth graders never made it to their junior year. And importantly, by the time they made it to their junior year, many of them had given up on the idea of going to college. So introducing them to programming at that time was just simply too late. So to understand what we can do differently, I began to dig into the developmental psychology literature, and lo and behold, realized that there's a lot that we can learn about why students do certain things and why they don't do certain things. So why some of my students' hands were in the air, but then they weren't following through on their, signing up for enrichment programs, for example, or why so many of them would fill out the FAFSA with me. By the way, it was paper at that time, but they would never mail it. It would go into the backpack, never to be seen again. And so we knew that students were taking some of the right steps, but not following through. So while we maybe need to understand how to do things differently, we can turn to developmental psychology. And that's what was really helpful for me. And one of the things that we learn is that having information doesn't necessarily lead to action. So take this guy, for example. Let's say he just went to the doctor and learned that his cholesterol was high, and his doctor said, you really should eat more fruits and vegetables. And then the next day he walked into the teacher's room. And if you've ever been in a teacher's room, you know that there's always some goodies in there. In Boston, it's always Dunkin' Donuts. So I chose this image. So information doesn't necessarily mean we act on it. This guy is about to not act on the information he got from the doctor. Maybe some of you have information that you don't act on. Maybe your spouse or loved one has told you a million times that they would like you to do something differently. For me, it's the way I load the dishwasher. I don't know, it's getting loaded. I think it's a good thing, but we don't necessarily internalize it. We don't necessarily act on it. And that's why a lot of my students came back saying, Miss, you never told me, ... And so we can look to behavioral health, just like behavioral health has helped doctors understand why patients might not finish their medicine and then engage differently with their patients. There's a lot of opportunity for us to look into understanding developmental psychology to try to understand students' cognitive development, understand why they may not take the steps that they need to pursue college. And in this way, it gives us some clues into how we might deliver some of the very same programming you're already doing, but maybe a little differently. So while there has been less attention to why behind college going, there is a lot in the developmental psychology literature. And one of the ways that I've engaged in my work is by pulling out from those topics how it relates to college and career readiness. Let me just give you an example. I wonder how many of you on this call today ever took a class in psychology when you were in college. Maybe you took an intro to psych class. And if you did, maybe you heard about the work of Erik Erikson. He's kind of a grandfather, if you will, in the psychology literature. He talks a lot about identity development. I took classes. I read all about Erikson and others, Marcia and others, but I never used it in my work, because historically psychologists and other researchers haven't taken the necessary step of taking their research and then applying it and saying, as a result of what we know, here's what this looks like in your work. And yet we can distill from psychology that there are parts of the college access and readiness process that are very developmental, and their developmental principles and their developmental processes. And if we can tap into them, I think many of our students would engage in the work that we're doing very differently. So the topics that I tend to write about really focus first and foremost on identity and self-awareness. And that really encapsulates envisioning oneself in the future, college or the workplace, believing in your ability to succeed in that future space, aiming for goals that matter, which really draws on motivation literature and science. The third is planning, organizing, taking the action steps, and that really draws on self-regulation. And the last area, which I'm not going to speak about too much today, is about marshaling resources, both internally, but also in our communities, our peers, our families, our broader communities. And in attending to these areas, what we see is that students can do some work early on that really set them up to engage thoughtfully. So before I jump in, I just want to say one more thing. It's going to seem like I have a lot of caveats, but I think this is important. When I talk about developmental psychology, I think there's a tendency to really focus all the work on the student or the individual. But we have to recognize that people, students, humans, they reside in settings, in contexts that are flawed. Their schools have challenges, institutions have challenges, students experience discrimination in their communities, in the workplace, in lots of ways. And so it can seem as though I'm focusing on students at the expense of the systems in which they live and grow and learn. So while I am a strengths-based person, I try to avoid deficit-oriented planning and thinking. I recognize that talking about development and attending to these developmental principles does not suggest that these are things that students lack. This is like other forms of development. We really want to promote these developmental competencies so that they are set up for success in high school and beyond. So with that, let me jump into identity. In many ways, conversations about college going begins with college going identities. We hear a lot about this. And for many people, we have to recognize that identity is the most salient aspect of development. For adolescents, that is definitely true. Adolescents are basically, much of what they're developing is a figuring out, who am I? And they're trying that out by trying on new clothes and listening to different music and experimenting with different friends, all the while taking in data. So here we come and we want to build a college going identity, but we have to take into account that students are trying to figure out who they are in their gender, in their race, in their ethnicity, in their communal space, and figuring out who they are, as well as developing even a future-oriented identity. When I go around the country and I work with schools who are committed to this, I see this in the form of schools that adopt big college going days, months, settings. This is an elementary school where students' homerooms were assigned by university. And there's this idea that if we expose students to college in some way, and when I say college, I mean post-secondary opportunities, community colleges, tribal colleges, women's institutions, as well as two-year institutions that are training for certificates. But this idea that if we expose students, they will then internalize it just doesn't work. It doesn't line up with what we know about identity. You know, just because I go to a lot of Broadway shows doesn't mean that I think I can be on Broadway. In fact, if you ever heard me sing, you would know that to be very much the case. In fact, identity development and the theories behind it tell us a number of things, but importantly, that is that identity is a multidimensional construct. It's influenced by many things, by the people around us, the settings we live in, the messages we get about our identities. And our goal is to help students form this sort of coherent view of self, that they can put all their parts together and it feel good, that it feels coherent. It means we have to help them integrate these different parts. Because when students feel that two parts of their identity are at odds with one another or they're in conflict, they're likely to do what Erickson described as foreclosing, or I would just say rejecting, that they foreclose on one of those identities. And so what happens is we're exposing students to future-oriented identities like going to college. Let me choose a career. Maybe it's a STEM career. But for an individual, some aspect of that feels in conflict with their gender or their race, they're going to choose. And so our work as identity developmentalists is to help them see college-going, future-oriented identities as part of a multidimensional self, that it is part of their gender, their race, and all the other dimensions of who they are. Now, what happens when students feel conflict is they struggle, and that struggle sometimes shows up as not following through on tasks. If I'm not really sure if me going to college is quite right, I'm not going to submit that FAFSA. I'm not going to follow through on those enrichments. So what happens is that conflict manifests itself as not necessarily taking the appropriate steps that my advisor or counselor told me to take. Now, some researchers have written about this. Howard London writes about this for first generation students. He referred to this concept of breaking away, that for students who are in the first in their family to go to college, they feel a sense of breaking away when they go to college. Now, folks who study social class say a similar thing, that students who are going off to college begin to feel a kind of straddling between social classes. Maybe their family is working class and they're going to college, has the potential to put them in a different social class, and they feel a sense of straddling that's uncomfortable. And the way students deal with that is that sometimes it creates a sense of resistance in them, or they try to keep these two worlds separate, which doesn't really work well for students. So while they may go to college, in that straddling sense, they struggle. The other researcher I'll mention quickly is Heckner. John Heckner does work on rural students. And he found when talking to rural students about going to college that they began to internalize this idea that moving up implies moving out. That is, if I go off to college, that's a form of moving up. I am leaving my community, my rural community. And in that way, maybe uncomfortable or give the impression that I think I'm better than, in a way that again causes conflict or tension. Now, as I said, identity development is a big thing for adolescents. So much of their developmental energy is spent trying to figure out who they are. And when they feel this conflict, the easiest and sometimes most efficient thing for them to do is to choose one or the other, or to hold back on acting on some of these or taking the steps they need to get there. So some of our work entails helping students recognize and name the different parts of their identity that they value, and making sure they know that those identities can still be valued along with forming a future-oriented identity. So for a moment, I just want to have us think about, maybe we can use the chat. Emily, I know you're watching. Just throw in the chat parts of your identity. Let's see if we can get some ideas out there. What part of your identity feels salient to you? Maybe even just in this moment, what feels salient? And Emily, would you call some out, because I don't have the chat showing?
Sure thing.
Just take a moment. People can call out some dimensions.
Family, values from my childhood, mother, youth advocate, gardener, California at heart, healthcare provider, military, teacher, faith, first generation college student, rural, working class, always a village girl, helper of students, minority, caregiver, mom, teacher, Alaskan.
Great. Thank you, Emily. So people who study identity development suggest that our dimensions of identity can be grouped into one of three categories. The first is the groups that we belong to. And oftentimes the groups that we belong to include our gender, our social class, our race, our ethnic background. It may be our political ideology, our religion. They're things often that we're born into or that we choose very actively. The second dimension or category of identity is the roles that we play. And so many roles were named there, both in mother, sister, and teacher, but also caregiver. I think of people who are financial planners for their family, financial providers in their family, translators. All of those are roles that we play in our world, in our homes, in our schools, and in our relationships. Maybe some of you are the peacemaker in your family. I'm one of 3 girls, so I find I'm often doing a lot of peacemaking with my siblings. And the third category is self-concept. And we're going to talk about that just in a moment. But one of the ways that we can engage students in thinking about their identity is through activities that invite them to create identity charts or really call out different parts of who they are. And you'll see here that this comes from some work here called the Facing History Project. And they use identity charts to help students begin to pull out parts of their identity that are important to them. And by the way, one of the challenges with identity is it's largely invisible. We don't know what part of someone's identity is important to them or what part might be feeling in conflict with going to college. So you see here with Stephanie, she names that she's not entirely Haitian and she's not entirely American, that she recognizes that she speaks English better than her parents, but she speaks English with an accent. So she's really defining herself in relation to her twin brother and her parents. being somewhat Haitian and somewhat American. All of these parts of identity need to be integrated into a college going identity. So if you were to do this with your students, maybe you want to use something like an identity wheel that invites them to fill out a chart highlighting different aspects of their identity, and even asking them, to what extent are these identities consistent with going to college? Lots of kids can talk about their identities from middle school and up. You know, I think sometimes we think this work has to start with students late in their lives, but really talking about what values they have, as someone put in the chat, the values make up who you are. And there's lots of opportunity for those here, right? Now, what happens is when students are able to integrate these different dimensions of their identity, they're more likely to be able to take the steps and be successful as they make a transition. And there's a quote here that I took from a project that says, a college student, a Wellesley woman, the student says, as a Wellesley student, a woman who will and is a part of academia, I'm also a hillbilly, an Appalachian, and a Kentuckian. And when students really can take those parts of their identity, and you'll notice in this quote, even this woman is thinking about a future-oriented identity because she says, I will be part of academia. She sees herself as staying in this space, not just as a college student. Right? This is what an integrated identity looks like. Now, as I said, building a college or future-oriented identity means taking into account envisioning and believing. Now, envisioning is learning about identity. It's building aspirations. It's putting the career ideas onto the identity charts. It's putting college on the identity charts and helping them envision themselves in a very multidimensional way. But identity is also made up of, in addition to the envisioning, developing aspirations and goals, it's also made up of something called believing. Now, if envisioning is about goals and aspirations being consistent with dimensions of my identity, believing really tackles the part about the self-concept, the part I mentioned but didn't jump into. And believing is about developing expectations that are based on my beliefs about my ability. And what I think happens is that when I spoke to those ninth graders and I said, how many of you want to go to college? I think they'd heard about it enough that they all raised their hand and they all envisioned. But I think if I had said to them, how many of you believe that you're going to go to college? I may not have seen as many hands go up in the air. And so thinking about future-oriented identities means we have to take into account believing. There's a lot of work that goes into transitioning between high school and college. And some students show up on college campuses not really believing that they can do it. They've done so much envisioning, they've done so much follow through. As I described it, they yesed me to death, but then they get there and they're like, I'm not even sure I believe I can do it. So looking at believing, I think this is an area where we actually haven't, sorry about that, put as much attention. I think a lot of our programming is about exposing students. We take them on college campuses. We build panels where students talk about having gone to college. There's a lot of exposure kinds of activities without really tackling the believing part. And this is where I think a lot of the work needs to happen. Now, psychologists talk about the beliefs in lots of different ways. The way that, and the construct that I like to use, and I believe is very useful for college access, is a construct called self-efficacy. And you'll see I've got Rosie the Riveter there to show us the feeling strong. Self-efficacy in a very basic way is the belief in one's ability to accomplish a given task. Importantly, it also means that I believe in my ability to persist in the face of obstacles in still achieving that task. Now, Albert Bandura, who introduced this concept, says that self-efficacy is a really valuable thing to know about. It is, in fact, a cognitive judgment. It means it's a judgment we make about ourselves. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. I mean, it matters, but it doesn't affect the sense of efficacy. It's just a judgment that we're making about our ability. And unlike self-esteem, which is more of a global concept, self-efficacy is very domain specific. That means that we all have a sense of self-efficacy about ourselves in very specific domains or specific things. Like I might have very strong sense of efficacy in giving presentations, but I might have very low sense of self-efficacy with cooking, right? So this is really a cognitive judgment about what we believe we're good at and what we believe if things got hard, like I showed up today and didn't have my notes, then I could still do it. right? Persist in the face of obstacles. So let me ask you again, let's try the chat and I'll call on Emily to help. What are some things where you feel a strong sense of efficacy? Things you feel like you're pretty good at. You can do it. You haven't made a judgment about things you're good at in self-efficacy. Remember, this is a belief. What do you think you're good at? And what do you believe you can do if things get hard? And remember, these are domain specific. That means it's very specific task. Emily?
We've got Excel, talking about study abroad, meeting people where they are, presenting, training staff, academic advising, listening to others, cooking, public speaking, encouraging others, coaching, encouraging, being passionate and supportive, science, listening, being creative, advocating for students, growing seeds, asking guiding questions, listening and supporting, sewing, connecting with kids.
All right, sounds like a good stopping point. I'm always interested in who the people say they have a strong sense of efficacy in cooking. I really want to, when I do presentations in person, I kind of find them because they're good people to know. I have a low sense of self-efficacy in cooking, but let me use that as an example of highlighting the value of this concept. For those of you who have a strong sense of self-efficacy around cooking, you feel like you're pretty good at it, you're gonna cook and people are gonna eat it, and even if you are out of an ingredient, you feel like I can figure something out. My guess is that you don't always use recipes, that sometimes you taste something and you know you just need to add a little pinch or a dab of something, that you really can experiment and you feel a pretty good sense of your ability to do it. Am I right? I can't tell, but I'm going to assume I'm right.
Yeah, you have agreement.
Okay, good. Now, for the folks who are like me, who don't feel a strong sense of efficacy around cooking, maybe you're not feeling quite as strong at it. Maybe you follow recipes to a T. Maybe you follow line by line, and if you're out of something, you run to the store to get it, or you maybe check Google to see what you should do to improvise, or maybe when you're baking, you take the flour in the measuring cup and you use the knife because you want to level it off because you don't want an extra drop of flour in there. Because what happens is that our actions are very much aligned with our beliefs. If we believe we're not good at something, we're not going to take risks. We're not going to try new things. We're not going to jump into uncertainty. And we're going to enter with a sense of trepidation, right? Telling you line by line on the recipes. Or if you feel like you can't do something, you just may not do it. You may not cook a lot. You may rely on others cooking. And so the reason that self-efficacy is so valuable is because the judgments that students make about themselves, about college going, about pursuing a career, isn't just about whether they aspire to do it. It includes whether or not they believe they can do it. Again, these are cognitive judgments. They may be wrong, but they are in fact the thing that resides inside of them invisibly, meaning we don't know what kind of sense they have of their capacities. And it then shapes so much of what they do. So Bandura, because he was a helpful psychologist, actually said the great thing about self-efficacy is it's not a trait, it is malleable. It is a judgment, and judgments can be changed. They can be nurtured, they can be altered. So here's what Bandura had to say about this. He said that there are 4 things that can really matter to building a sense of self-efficacy in students and individuals. And I'm going to share them with you today. And I'm going to give you some examples and how they work, and hope that you can bring them into your work. The first is that mastery of experience. And what that means is that people build a sense of efficacy when they master the act of it to some extent. Now that means maybe if you wanted to build a student's self-efficacy around going to college, maybe they're enrolling in an online class and doing some academic work, or maybe they had to find their way around a campus, but they got to try something out, much like every time I cook and I do it and people eat it and it comes out okay, that fosters a greater sense of efficacy. So what we want to do is give students the opportunity to master things. We want to be really careful that we don't undermine their mastery by doing things for them. When I was a high school counselor, there was a college access organization that called me and asked me to send her the transcripts of the 20 students who were in the program. And I said, no, I think the students are capable of coming to me and asking for their transcript. And she said, yes, but this would be faster and it guarantees I get it. And I understood totally where she was coming from. I did. But I also knew that we were depriving the students of an opportunity to master a part of the process, which is going and asking for your transcript from your counselor and then taking it there. And if students can't do that, then we want to build in scaffolds to help them get there, because just doing for them really undermines opportunities for mastery. Now, what Bandura says is it can't be too hard, because if it's too hard, they just won't do it. And if it's too easy, it doesn't really foster their sense of efficacy. Like, yeah, I boiled pasta, but that doesn't make me a good chef, right? If it's too easy, it doesn't necessarily alter their sense of efficacy. The second thing is vicarious learning. This is about seeing other people do it. This is why when we take students to college campuses or we let them visit workplaces where they see people doing the job, their belief in their ability to do it is altered, right? I always say that in Boston, the day after the Boston Marathon, sneaker sales go way up because people see all these runners and they're like, I can do that. But like others, watching others, it's not just anybody. When we watch others do it, we're paying very careful attention to, are they like me? Are they my age? Are they my gender? Are they my race? Did they move away from home like me? When I watch the marathon, I'm like, do they have 3 kids and a demanding job, right? Like we all are assessing things, and that's what forms our judgments. So vicarious learning we do with students is about exposing them and then helping them see and make meaning of those experiences in a way that they can apply it to themselves. The third is social persuasion. This is the one I think as advisors and college access professionals we're really good at. I think some people wrote that in the chat. You're good at encouraging people. I too would identify myself as someone who's very encouraging. Social persuasion means that we tell others that we believe they can do it. You know, we believe that they should have this judgment about themselves. Bandura says this is an important one, but it's not the most important one. And what is essential, however, is that the person who does the persuading matters. If that person doesn't know your student, so if someone's trying to persuade me to run the Boston Marathon, but they don't know me, well, then how do they know I can do it? They don't know anything about me. Or if that person has never run a day in their life and I don't trust that they know what they're talking about, that social persuasion is not going to translate into efficacy. So what it means is that if we want our social persuasion to work, we have to make sure that students know that we see them, we understand them, and importantly, that we know what we're talking about. That this is, in my experience, having done this with lots of students, the things I see in you, concrete example, concrete example, concrete example, lead me to believe that you can do this. That's how social persuasion works. And Bandura does say that the most impactful of the 4 is mastery of experience, not social persuasion, and that social persuasion on its own is not enough to build a sense of efficacy. The last dimension is a really complicated one in terms of describing it, because it's not something we do. It's just something we know. And that is, these are the influencers of efficacy, and affect matters. So if a student's affect is compromised in some way, they are experienced trauma, they're dealing with chronic stress, they may live with a physical illness. If in any way that their affect is compromised, it means that their cognitive judgment may also be compromised. That is, if a student lives with chronic stress, they may be making assumptions or judgments about their abilities that are inconsistent with who they are. And so we just need to know that, because those are opportunities for us to clarify and help them build more accurate assessments. So we've been talking about identity. I want to summarize by saying what you can do to support identity is 1, knowing it matters. Recently, the superintendent of Boston called me and said, I want to hire all new 9th grade counselors at our high schools to work on this academic intervention. And I said, if they're counselors, they can really do a lot of identity work. And she said, no, we just want the academics to get on track. And I said, do the identity work and the academics will follow. Identity development is the core of who students are, whether they're developing an academic identity, a scholar identity, or a future-oriented identity. The second thing to know is that our task is recognizing that students are made up of lots of parts, and our job is to figure out what they are and help students acknowledge them and integrate them. And know that self-efficacy is very essential in building that college-going or future-oriented identity. If we only pay attention to the aspirations and never attend to or listen for the beliefs, we may miss opportunities to really support students. Let me transition to motivation. Why am I here? Why am I going to college? Maybe you've heard colleagues say to you, oh, he's just not motivated, or she's just not that motivated, or they're just not that motivated. It takes more than just identifying yourself as someone who can go to college, but the reasons you go are just as important. We use this term motivation all the time. And the reality is that motivation science tells us that sometimes our understanding of how motivation works is slightly wrong. So here's what we know. We know that motivation is not binary. It's not that either someone has it or don't. Everybody is motivated. We're just motivated by different things. Your students are motivated to go to church, or they're motivated to play video games, or they're motivated to help their families. They're motivated by things. They're just not always motivated to do the things that we want them to do. So it's not a yes or no. And the second thing that's often a misperception is that we can give somebody motivation, that we can motivate others. Motivation is an internal process. It is an internal process. That means nobody can give me an internal process. They can set the conditions for me to do it. Somebody can help nurture it, but it is very much about setting the conditions for people to become motivated. So it's a process. Now, psychologists define it in this way, and I'm going to share this with you twice because I think it's so important. They define it as an internal process, and it is a combination of the kinds of goals that we set, the reasons we set them, and the actions we take to achieve them. But that's what motivation is. So let's start with that. The beliefs and the goals that drive action. So motivation is about what we believe is possible. We just talked about self-efficacy, and actually growth mindset and fixed mindset fits in here, but I'm going to leave that out for now because I think the most important thing that we covered today around motivation is that it's really about the goals that students set and why they set them. Oftentimes we focus only that people set goals and we never dig into why, but the science tells us that if the why isn't very well developed, students don't follow through on those goals. They give up on them more easily, and they give up on the tasks to achieve them. So let me connect this to college going. And that is that the reasons that students pursue post-secondary education matter. And this is important because we all talk to students about the importance of going to college. When I was a counselor, I talked to students about the importance of going to college with a chart like this. Has anyone seen a chart like this? Maybe you've used a chart like this. I did. And I would stand up in front of my students and I would say, look how much more money you'll make if you go to college. And, you know, this is one way. This is called a hook. And this is one way to get students' attention because dollar signs sometimes matter. But there are lots of problems with this. For starters, it's very condescending in the work that I often did with students from low-income communities to presume that all they care about is money. That's, you know, full stop, really limiting. It is in fact true. But depending on the age you're working with students, they don't have a concept for these dollars, right? They don't know what monthly bills are or might be for them. And so the dollar signs might be like, well, that 33 looks pretty good to me. That's more than my family makes. And so this becomes very appealing in a way that sort of is unintended in the reason why you might do it. Lots of ways to raise aspirations. But when we start here, motivation science says that we're running the risk of setting students up for failure. The reason is that Ryan and Desi, folks who write about motivation science, I just like to really honor the people who've done this work because I do a lot of translational work. So if you hear me throwing out researchers' names, you can ignore them. I just really want to honor them. Suggest there's two different kinds of goals. You've heard these before. There's doing things because they bring inherent interest. Those are intrinsic. They satisfy us on the inside, and extrinsic. And that's when we do things, we set goals or we perform tasks because of getting something externally, like money or praise or let's think of another one, a degree. I mean, we all go to work because we get a paycheck, that matters, but we also go to work because we really like our work. We really value the joy that it brings us. And what we know is that people who over rely on extrinsic rewards, which money is, they're not as successful because they don't always follow through on tasks because their only reason we're doing it is for extrinsic reasons. Here's the thing that's important. Extrinsic reasons aren't all bad. When we do things for extrinsic reasons, sometimes it works. I potty trained 3 kids. Maybe some of you have potty trained children. Marshmallows work. They really do. But they don't work in the long run. They work initially to get people excited. And so we need a balance of intrinsic and extrinsic reasons. And if we solely focus on the extrinsic reasons, we set students up, because when the carrot's gone, things stop mattering. We really want students to have a nice balance. Now, Desi and Ryan say there's one other kind of goal that's really important, and that's called internalized regulation. And what this means is that it's not that taking physics brings me inherent joy, but I know the value of taking physics is that it's going to get me something else. So if I want to exercise to show off, having lost weight for my sister, that's very extrinsic, right? Versus exercising because it makes me feel good. It makes me feel more relaxed. It helps me feel fit and strong. Intrinsic, extrinsic. But we know sometimes we do things not because we like them, but because we know that they are a link to something else. So for me, as someone who does exercise, I know when that alarm goes off at 5 a.m., I take no joy in that. There is no inherent interest in it, but I know how good I'll feel if I actually do wake up. I know that I'll be a better worker, I'll be a better parent, I'll be a better friend, because I will have had a chance to get moving, and I know I'll be stronger. So I've internalized the value of waking up at the crack of dawn, not because I like it, but because the value of it is there. So our work with students is making sure that we're not over relying on extrinsic. We're helping students internalize the value of some of those things. And maybe we're introducing them to intrinsic value. So this quote comes from some research a colleague of mine did on the summer melt. And she was talking to students who basically did not persist in college. And this young woman says, there's a difference between wanting to go to college and someone telling you they want you to go to college. Because when you go to college for reasons you don't know why, then you drop out because you don't know why you're there. You're going for someone else, and it's like a promise you're keeping that's not yours. It's not your own promise. And what she's capturing is this idea of, if you're only going to college to make others proud, it's not enough. I can't say it's not important. I worked with many students whose families were immigrants to the United States and who took many risks and made many sacrifices to be here. They wanted to go to make their families proud. That's not a bad thing. We also want them to start to find reasons why they might go for themselves and start introducing other reasons besides the financial or the extrinsic. Again, it's not that one is good and one is bad. We need balance. So the question becomes, what happens when students don't know why? Well, what I have found is that students sometimes equate going to college as a way of getting out of poverty or getting out of a community or a cycle that has put their family in jeopardy or in struggle. Many first-generation college-bound students say they want to give back to their communities after they graduate, but sometimes they don't come to that until they get away from their communities and see the opportunity for going to college to help bring them back to their community. So let me tell you a quick story about that. There's a book called Hope in the Unseen about a boy named Cedric Jennings. He grew up in Washington, D.C., and he went to Brown University. And a reporter named Ron Susskind chronicled his transition to one of the lowest performing schools in the country in Washington to Brown. And he struggled. He was a triple major in business, economics, and I think finance. And he said going to college was about making money. He went and he struggled academically. He struggled spiritually. He was a very spiritual person. He was far away from his family, and he found it, just difficult on all accounts. He graduated from Brown. He worked in finance for a few years, and then he actually made his way to the Harvard Graduate School of Education. I've never met him. I just love this book. And he came here and he got a master's in, oddly, the Prevention Science and Practice program, but again, before my time, and became a social worker. And he's now a social worker with the Department of Children and Families. And because I love his book and his story so much, I watch him on YouTube, and I've heard him speak. And one of the things he says when people invite him to speak is that he always thought of going to college as a way out of the ghetto, a way out of poverty. He never thought of it, and he was never encouraged to think of it as a way back into his community. And he thinks if he had gone to college with that in mind, he might have engaged very differently and maybe wouldn't have struggled the ways that he did. So it's on us to diversify that narrative, to center students' college going in ways that really matter to them, and even introduce something they hadn't even considered, and challenge maybe some narratives they've formed. So how can we do this? So for a moment, just pop in the chat. What are some other reasons for going to college that you might tell students about? What are some other reasons? I'll invite Emily when a few answers pop in to share some out.
To learn about themselves, to learn about who you are, learn about something you find interesting, caring for people, land, environment, and their community, meet like-minded people, sense of accomplishment, broaden perspectives, challenge yourself, time when to be around, be who you are, it's different, to explore concepts, meet new people. Let's explore how you may be a leader and serve your community as a college grad. Self-sufficiency, opening new lenses, new opportunities, expand your circle, gain knowledge that will help your community.
Great. Wonderful. So, some of the things we can do are even introduce that those are reasons one goes to college. If you have a panel come back, ask them to talk about those reasons for going to college. Maybe you want to adopt what this college access organization did, and they created a tree in the back of the classroom and had students create different reasons for going to college. And then every time they had a speaker come in, they added a leaf. And what it did is it created a peer influence where peers were influencing one another because they hadn't considered that their own peers might be thinking differently about going to college. So when you're thinking about motivation, it's about helping students become aware of reasons for going and also a balance set that doesn't over rely on extrinsic reasons. It also allows you to invite students to think about what those values are, what they like, what they value, what their interests are. And make sure that you're attending to the different parts of motivation beyond the chart about how much more money you'd make. Lastly, I want to talk about self-regulation. I'm almost out of time. I know I need to wrap up. So let me just share this last piece, which is thinking about students who just don't follow through. So they have a sense of identity, their reasons for going to college are clear, and yet they're still dropping the ball, not following through, and really just their aspirations are not matching their behaviors. The last place to look is self-regulation. Self-regulation, defined broadly, is the ability to manage thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. And if you've seen Inside Out, a great film that really captures this, watch it if you haven't seen it. It's a Pixar film. It really captures this idea that all of us need to be able to manage our thoughts, our emotions, and behaviors. Now, elementary school teachers are great at teaching these because this is a lot of what we do with children. But as students get older, we stop teaching these things and we assume that young people just have them, that they have developed skills around attention and focus and cognitive flexibility, being able to shift gears if things aren't working right, planning, organizing, delaying gratification. Yet these are skills that we have the ability to teach students in the work that we do. We certainly know that applying to college is going to require many, many steps, and that being organized and having a plan matters. But it happens to be that there are lots of ways, even before the application process, that we can integrate this. Self-regulation, which is what allows us to be in control and turn our goals into action, is like being in the driver's seat in your brain, in the front part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, and allows us to act in ways that are independent and efficient. And we know that being autonomous is important to teens. Adolescents want to do things for themselves. They want to be in control, but sometimes they haven't developed the skills to do that. When my kids were young, I had them all name their driver. And I would often say, wake up Stella, who was my oldest driver, in her brain when she just wasn't paying attention, or she went upstairs to get her socks and then got lost into some play or something upstairs. This way of helping students think about being in control, delaying gratification, turning off social media when they're supposed to be doing their homework, or even figuring out why they're not bringing their family's tax forms in when you want to help them fill out the FAFSA. All of those things require self-regulation skills. And what's interesting to note is that historically we believed that executive functioning skills were developed in kids between the ages really of 4 and 7. And that the brain, because it was really developing then, that prefrontal cortex was developing. But what we've learned since is there's another bump in development around these skills because the brain continues to develop. And that's happening around the ages of really 15 to 20. And that means if we think of our students' brains as in development while we're with them, then we see that we are still in a position to help them develop these skills. How we do that is that we teach them these skills in the work that we do. And we know that if they have these skills, they are not only going to be able to put their goals into action, they're going to do better in school. These are just good skills. But if you think about it, when children are little, parents regulate everything they do. So it's called other regulation. The parents decide what they eat, when they eat, how much TV they watch, right? All those things, other people, caregivers, grandparents, really regulate them. When kids get to college, or even the last years of high school, they really have to be self-regulators. They decide when they get to college if they eat, how much they eat, if they party the night before a test. All those things require self-regulation. But in between those two spaces, we have to teach students how to do that. So very quickly, let me give you a few ideas. The first is teaching them planning. Can they plan if-then statements, like having them anticipate potential obstacles? When you go to college, what might get in your way? How can we develop kind of a set or a menu of strategies you can use? It's like when you pick up your phone and you put in the address you want to go to, and Google Maps gives you 3 different routes, and you have to choose the one you want. But if you go on one and it doesn't work out, you can actually hop to a different route. You want to teach kids to think that way. There's lots of ways to get to be a nurse. There's lots of ways to give back to your community. There's multiple pathways for everything. The benefit of teaching multiple pathways as a concept and blueprinting it is they learn that if something's not going well, it doesn't mean they just have to give up. They know that there's another way around it. It's just a way of thinking. I'm going to skip this one really quickly and get to the delay of gratification. Those of you who are familiar with the infamous marshmallow study know that Walter Mischel, who was a psychologist from Stanford, wanted to understand children's ability to delay gratification. So he took a bunch of 4 and 5-year-olds, he gave them a marshmallow. He said to them, I'm going to step out of the room for 10 minutes. And when I come back, if you don't eat that marshmallow, then I'm going to give you a second marshmallow. Now, by the way, it wasn't Walter Mischel, it was a bunch of grad students. And just to put this in context, imagine not a marshmallow, but like a cup of coffee first thing in the morning, and not 10 minutes, but like 5 hours. Because like kids and marshmallows, really hard to turn it down. He found that like 3/4 roughly of the kids took the marshmallow the minute they walked out of the room and ate it. But the other quarter at 4 and 5 years old did something. They used strategies to delay it. They looked away, they sang songs, they smelled the marshmallow, they put it away. They thought about how good the second marshmallow would be. They used strategies. Delaying gratification is something kids have to do all the time. They have to delay the gratification of playing video games and doing their homework. They have to delay gratification of hanging out with their friends, maybe who aren't signing up for some of the enrichment programs you have for them. So we have to begin to look for opportunities to teach this. And that's hard because in this day and age, with technology and media, we're not asking students to do this a lot. In fact, I often say, pardon me, I'm having a technological thing, pardon me for 1 second. I'm almost done here. When I travel on the highway, I see a sign that tells me how long it's going to take for me to get 12 miles because lo and behold, I guess I can't wait to find out how long 12 miles is going to take. Our culture has begun to do things to tell us how long something's going to take, not allowing us to develop opportunities to delay our gratification. So we can do this. We have to teach students. They have to wait for certain things and then be clear with them how great it's going to be. Give them strategies to manage it. And then also reinforce to them how good that second marshmallow is going to be in whatever form you take. So what can you do? I ran through self-regulation rather fast, but fortunately, Emily held up Ready, Willing, and Able, where more of this is available, but help students develop these skills. Look at ways of doing planning. When you start a lesson, say, here's our goal. This is my goal for this lesson today around college going. And at the end of the lesson, take a moment and be like, how did we do? Did we reach our goal? Do we use our time wisely? That's a self-regulatory skill. It's planning, it's reflecting. Build that in, build in if-then statements. If you do this, then what will happen? It helps students do that throwing forward that's necessary in their planning skill development. As I wrap, I just want to say that I wrote Ready, Willing, and Able over 10, just about 10 years ago now, and people have adopted developmental practices in their work. And when I've talked to them about how they've incorporated identity and they've talked about the amazing things that have come from it, they said that there were a couple of things that were really important. I'm just going to mention them now, and then I'm going to pause and invite questions if we have time. The first is that we have to be willing to have difficult conversations with kids about their identity. They have to feel safe to talk about their sexual identity and their race or their ethnicity, particularly if it differs from ours. We have to avoid the tendency to do for students rather than with them. That's hard when the stakes are high. I know. It would have been much easier if I had just taken those FAFSA forms back in the day and mailed them for students, or made the call to the bursar or to somebody, but we deprive students of skill building opportunities. An academic home is a concept where we in schools and community-based organizations need to work together to create a home for students where all the different contributors to this process can work together, that we can pay attention to how we look at data together, how we share information, and ultimately make sure students know that there's a constellation of people working together for them. An element of that is avoiding something I call program rich and system poor. And that is, in lots of schools around the country, we have lots of programs, but we never pay attention to the system. How is the sum greater than its parts? Do we have lots of programs we're throwing in or lots of resources, or have we stepped back to look at how all these parts fit together? And lastly, we need our school leaders on board. They need to ensure that counselors are carrying out appropriate duties. They're not spending all their time on lunchroom duty and bus duty and testing, but that community-based organizations, college access organizations, and counselors are working together to make sure that schools have the kinds of cultures that reinforce all of the principles that I've talked about today. With that, I apologize for going over. Thank you to Emily for engaging in the chat. Thank you all for being here. I do use the Twitter. I think that's called a handle. I'd love to hear from you, and you have my contact information. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mandy. I know that was a lot to take in. Again, I'd recommend Mandy's books. They're listed in the chat, and these are the two books. Also through Root Ed, a nonprofit that has been working with the Harvard Grad School, they have invited Alaskan cohort to join a monthly training that Mandy has facilitated. If that is something that you're interested in joining, you could send me an email and I can help make some of those links. And lastly, I think we are out of time for questions right now, but if you do have some questions, put them in the chat and we will do our best to get some answers or discuss them perhaps a little bit later in our breakout groups as well. So go ahead and list your questions, even if we don't have time to discuss them right now.
And I'll make sure that you have a copy of the slides. So thank you very much for asking for that. And thank you again for having me here.
Emily, are we all done, ready to transition?
I think we are ready to transition, 9:40.
All
so
right. Thank you, Emily, for facilitating. And Mandy, thank you so much for being with us. We know you were under some tight schedules today too, so I think you have to run pretty soon. But we just really, really appreciate what you've shared, and thank you for sharing the presentation. And hopefully we'll keep the connection, relationship, and conversation moving forward. So thank you for being with us. All right. Well, we are going to transition into the next part of our agenda, and then we're going to take a break, and we'll come back with one of our first sponsor moments and hearing from President Pat Pitney with the University of Alaska. So the next item on our agenda is our AlaskaCAN membership meeting. So each of you, by registering, if you didn't know it already, you have become an official member of our AlaskaCAN network. And so as a part of our yearly conference, we host kind of what would be an annual meeting for, if you want to look at it that way, but as a part of our conference, we always host a membership meeting. So I'm going to call the membership meeting to order and appreciate everyone being a part of that. I want to note that our president of our AlaskaCAN network, Kate Hillenbrand, so she isn't with us today. So normally she would be facilitating this, but she had an emergency And we are definitely feeling we're missing her today. So I just hope we can all send a little bit of good vibes to Kate as we move into this part. She is a fantastic president. She leads us with incredible grace and just really an incredible way. She brings us all together in a really wonderful space. So we're sending up good vibes to Kate and missing her as we enter into this, as we continue on in our conference. So we're calling our meeting to order at 9:42. And we just want to let everyone know about a few items. And I am going to, I do serve as treasurer. As I said in my entrance, I also serve as kind of the longest standing board member. So I get to lead us into this meeting, but I'm going to definitely rely on my other committee members and board members in case I forget anything as we go through our membership meeting. We do have, Dominica is going to run a few things, share her screen as we look at a couple of items. But as we go into this, I just want to remind everyone, anybody who maybe has come in a little bit late, I see a lot of folks have changed their names. So fantastic. We're going to go into regional breakouts later this morning. And how we are going to be able to do that is if you would please change the way your name shows on the screen to what region you are living in, you work in, or you want to focus on for our regional breakout. And I see a lot of people have done that, but if you haven't done that, would you please do that so that Kathy, our facilitator, can make sure you get into the right room? And you may ask, how do I do that? So if you just take your cursor and go over your picture that you see, or your name, if your picture isn't there, you're going to see in the top right corner of your little box, there's 3 dots. And if you click on those 3 dots, you can select rename. And when you rename, then you can put your region. And thank you, Dominica, for sharing our regional map. So you'll note we have a northern region, an interior region, we have the Southwest, Anchorage, Matsu, and Gulf Coast. So I think those are the 5 regions. So we just want to make sure to get everyone in the right region, and please rename your name on your picture or your little box. That'd be really helpful. Okay, so, and if you have questions, just write them in the chat and we hopefully will be able to help you. We do have a membership, our annual membership application. It is on our website. I think that Dominique is going to share our website. We want to note our new website is launched. So we just went through a whole process and our website has a new look to it. If you have ever gone to it before, you'll see some really lovely changes. It's become a lot more, we hope, a lot more user-friendly. And you really can access everything you would need to access on our AlaskaCAN. And it's 65by2025.org is our website. So definitely check that out. Again, our membership, our annual membership application is there. You can fill that out. It gives us a little bit more information about you. But like I said, as a conference attendee and a conference registrant, you are already technically a member. So welcome back to those who have been with us for a long time, and welcome to some of our new folks who are just joining us this year. We do have, as a part of our as network, we have 5 committees. So we love it when we have members as a part of our committees. And Dominique is sharing on the screen what our committee listing. We have an advocacy committee, an external relations committee. We're looking at research and data. You'll see a lot of that information. We have a really great dashboard that also can be linked from our website. We are updating that right now. So what you would find if you went to the dashboard now is information from a couple of years ago. Our new information will be updated very soon on that. Here's what the dashboard looks like right now. But so that research and data does a lot with helping us with that dashboard. We also have, and I don't want to go too fast, but I'm also kind of watching our time. And I know Dominica is working through our website with us so that we can show everyone a few of the really great tools that it has. We also have our professional development committee. As one of the things we host is about every quarter, we host a get together where we bring in speakers on a topic, and then an opportunity for some engagement with our membership. The professional development committee is in charge of that. My co-chair Barbara is our chair of that committee, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that on day 3, because what we really want to hear from you as our membership is what are topics that are you're interested in. So, and there we go. We have a fall and spring convening, and then we of course have our winter conference. So think about topics you may want us to bring that would be helpful in the work you do, or in our current state, and make sure to bring those to the table on Thursday when we're talking about that. And then our last one is, of course, our AlaskaCAN Governance Committee, which just brings everyone together and really is kind of talking administration and the treasury and things of that nature. So if any of those, if you are interested in joining any of those committees, we would absolutely love for your engagement. Please feel free to type in the chat if you want more information, or connect with Dominica, which we can share Dominica's email address, but let us know if you would like to join those committees. They are fantastic, and having our board members are all a part of certain committees, but having members be a part of those as well is so valuable to us. So we hope that folks will be able to join us for some of for a committee that you're really interested in. We also have our board of director elections. So every year we elect some new officers. Of course, they're kind of on a rolling, they're rolling. We have, and somebody might be able to help me. Do we have a total of 15 officers? And this year we are electing a number of them, and we have nominees. You will get to hear from the nominees later today. And everybody, like I said, I'm going to come back. Everybody's a member now, so you all have a vote to vote for our slate of candidates for our board of directors. They will start, really they start in April. So we are excited to have so many nominees this year. And this is a great visual, again, which can be found on the website of who is running, but also all of the seats that are of our board, which we really want to be as connected as possible to both education and business and various Alaskan stakeholders that are truly also, oh, it's tomorrow we're hearing from nominees. Thank you, Shelley, keeping me on the straight and narrow. But really just wanting to make sure we have engagement. So members on this call, all 67 of you, if you're interested in running for a board seat, we would love to have your engagement, and we would love for you to get to nominate yourself next year. It is okay to nominate yourself. The more we have involved, the better. So think about if you haven't run or are not on this slate, think about running next year. We would love to get you involved. We want to also make sure that your organization is listed under our AlaskaCAN partners and supporters. And Dominica, are you able to pull that up? So on our website, look at our partners, and we want to make sure to have a really good, robust list of all of our supporters and partners. So take a look. We'll put this link or this website link into the chat if someone would do that for me. Take a look and make sure that we have your organization listed. And if we don't, reach out to us so that we can make sure to do that. Yes, yes, yes. And I want to open it up at this point to my other fellow board members. Are we missing anything? Did I miss anything? Did I miss covering anything that we wanted to make sure all of our membership knows about? Just give us a chance. Barbara, anything that you can think of that we haven't
Not
touched
that I
on?
can think of, Pearl. You did an awesome
I
job.
did it?
Thank you for
Hey.
jumping in there.
Hey,
I
hey,
love it when we
hey.
all come together.
That's right.
No, I don't have anything to add. But like Pearl said, we love active members. So if you want to join any of the committees, if you want to run for the board next year, please. And you can start coming to the meetings prior to running for the board. Our meetings are open to anybody, even they're called board or director meetings. So please attend any meeting you would like.
And they are held every month on the third Thursday from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And then the committee meetings are held also at different points in time throughout the month. And most committees meet just about monthly. So, we are, maybe I'll just add that, we're really an organization driven by, we're a nonprofit, we're driven by the membership. We're driven by our board, we're driven by our membership. So the more we get to hear from each of you and what you're doing, what your needs are, where we may be able to help and support, the better. We really want to be as engaged as possible. So, but we can't do that, right? It takes all of us in order to do that. So very important piece. I'm just gonna, Shelly, we didn't really get a chance to give a shout out to Shelly. Shelly is not technically one of our co-chairs, but Shelly Morgan with ACPE really should be our third co-chair because she's been fantastic through this whole process. But Shelly also always thinks about something else we haven't quite talked about. So Shelly, anything else on the membership meeting that we want to make sure to let all of our team, all of our members know about?
I think you did an excellent job covering everything. Just really, we have a really fun group of people. And I think we all really enjoy when we get the opportunity to get together at our meetings and at our, both the big membership meetings, but also on our committee meetings. And absolutely, we welcome any and all of you to sign up and join our committees and work with us, because it's great. It's so important to have the different voices and the different thoughts, because everybody is coming from a slightly different window. And that is how we're really going to get where we all want to be with this organization and with post-secondary attainment in our state. So no, you did a great job, Pearl. Thank you.
Thanks, Shelly. Yep. Teamwork makes the dream work. Barbara.
I just want to mention, I forgot to mention it this morning. I do apologize when I was doing the housekeeping, that if you're having any technical problems today, tomorrow, or any of the days of the conference, contact Kathy Lecomte on the chat and she will be happy to assist you. So I do apologize for not mentioning that today. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thanks, Barbara. All right. Well, there's lots and lots of information there to digest. Please check out the website. The dashboard should be updated and go live relatively soon. We want your involvement. I think that's the biggest takeaway. This is our once a year chance to engage with you as our members of AlaskaCAN, and we just really appreciate your involvement in what we're doing, and we look forward to that increasing as we move forward. With that, I think I'll call our annual membership meeting to a close at 9:57. And at this point, we're going to go on a break. We will be back at 10 a.m. and we will move into one of our sponsor moments and kind of our second keynote from University of Alaska President Pat Pitney What we're going to do is just FYI, we're going to put a slide on the screen. We're going to have some great music. And when that music stops, that's kind of the indication that we are all coming back. There won't be a countdown or anything, but our intent is to start back up at 10 a.m. So please, turn off your cameras if you want, mute if you need to, although there's really good music, and take a quick little break, and we'll see everyone. I'm sorry, break ends at 10:10. We're going to break at 10. Our break ends at 10:10. Thank you. And we'll see everyone back at 10:10. Thank you. And we're not hearing any volume. Dominica.
That's my bad. I'll fix
Oh,
that.
All right, thanks, Kathy. Hey, Kathy, are we going to keep playing that for the 10 minutes or?
Yeah, I forgot to loop it. I'm doing it right now.
Gotcha. So folks, we're not coming back right now. 10 more minutes. Awesome. That was fun music. And thank you to Dominica and to Kathy for the PowerPoint and for making sure that it's running and we're running smoothly. Big shout out. We're gonna move into kind of the middle part of our morning together, and it gives me really great privilege and honor to introduce our next sponsor moment. But in a way, this is kind of our second keynote for the day. If you don't know me, you know that I am such a supporter and a staunch advocate for higher education. Spent most of my professional career in that area, and I truly believe in it. And about 6 months ago, transitioned from kind of my previous role on the North Slope to working for the University of Alaska. And I get to work every day with President Pat Pitney, and it is a great honor. I learn from her. I'm so excited for her leadership role at the university. And I think I want to just note that President Pitney served for about, and my timing may be a little, but I think about 18 months as interim. And on Friday, the Board of Regents officially approved President Pitney as our next official president, so that the interim has gone away. So I think our AlaskaCAN group might just get the distinction of being President Pitney's first kind of public engagement as our official new president of the University of Alaska. I don't know, President Pitney, if maybe you had something yesterday, but I'm going to take it that we're right at the beginning, and just so pleased that you're able to spend some time with us this morning and talk to our group about the university and the direction that you plan to take the university moving forward. So with that, President Pitney, I turn it over to you.
Great, and thank you. And I believe this is my first official external address in my formal capacity as president. And so thank you for that. I appreciate it. I wanted to talk today about the goals and measures that the board has adopted. So this is, the board adopted these the strategic guidance for the university just last week. And we've spent essentially the whole time as in my interim role developing this guidance document so that we have collectively across the university system, we have a shared path and shared approach, but also that we have the accountability and focus. And so with that, I will move along. So the context was, we're in a new environment. I came into the institution that had a reduced budget of over 100 million from the time I left, and that was over 8 years. Seven out of 8 years cumulative reductions of 1/3 of our base funding. The same time we were hit with COVID, our population as a state was declining, and our high school graduates has been declining. And so the goals that were in place prior to my arrival just were not, they were kind of completely out of scope to the institution that we are now. And so it was a reexamination and a putting us on that path. Jump past this. This just shows it was a full year-long process of putting it together. I want to talk a little bit about our mission and our values. And our mission and our values have been long-standing. So University of Alaska inspires learning, advances, and disseminates knowledge through teaching, research, and service, emphasizing the North and its diverse peoples. This this mission is all encompassing, and I appreciate what AlaskaCAN is doing because you're focused with a very broad scope as well. Our values have been, these are roughly about 20 years going, and they still hold true. You know, the University of Alaska is Alaska's system for public higher education. And with that, we have our 3 universities and their associated community campuses. And every university and community campus has a duty to their local community, but the entire state in working towards their needs at the local level, and also looking at it from a state perspective. So moving down, we have 5 broad goals, each one very important to us, contributing to Alaska's economic development, skilled workforce, and engaged citizenship, promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion, operating cost effectively, fostering academic excellence for student success, and then of course, growing our world-class research. So easy goals. This is the meat of our goals and measures, our strategic guidance from the board. And I'm going to spend a fair amount of time on this. First and foremost, and this fits for the AlaskaCAN as well, is increasing student enrollment. We are focused on this in many ways. Central to this strategy is FAFSA completion. So all of you out there who are helping spread the word on FAFSA completions, I asked, what if, you know, so Alaska is the lowest in the nation on FAFSA completion. I said, what if we were just average? How much money would that mean for students in Alaska for higher education? And just, you know, if we just got to average, that's $8 million more accessible for Alaska students for higher education. And what if we got to be at the very best? Tennessee has the highest FAFSA completion rate. That would be $15 million for Alaskans' higher education. That's the federal money we're leaving on the table. Another huge strategy here is to preserve the Higher Education Investment Fund. 4 students have challenged that legally. And although the Superior Court came back against the students, they're pushing on to Supreme Court to have it looked at that next level. Simultaneously, we're working on a legislative effort, just in case the legal approach doesn't come through. The other area is each of our universities provide aid within their campuses. The NANET pledge and NANET commitment at UAF are one. The 49 state finishers at UAA is another one. There's tremendous scholarships at UAS, focused, largely supported by the Greens Creek and Kensington Mine and the Community Foundation. The UA Foundation scholarships generate about $3.6 million annually in aid, and there's over 1,500 different scholarships through the UA Foundation. Making sure that we're targeting those funds to the donor's intent is always top on our list, but there's tremendous financial aid out there, and that's coupled with our enrollment. The other thing is that I see many people out there that are counselors and so forth. It's just the work we're doing to reach students. And our breadth of programs, from workforce development all the way through PhDs, makes it possible we can meet each student at where they're at. You know, are they a traditional person? They want to be on campus, or getting our campuses, you know, into our new post-COVID open, vibrant environment. We're excited about what fall has to bring, getting more back face to face. But at the same time, if somebody is place committed, we have many programs that are fully online, both synchronous and asynchronous. So that's very important point. This workforce, develop workforce and focused economic development initiatives. This is a really broad scope. We've got the work we're doing on short programs, fast track programs, micro credentials, but we're also looking at research areas. So our budget request over the past, for this year is highlighting key research areas where we can make the biggest impact on Alaska's economy. There's one focused on strategic minerals and rare earth element mining practices, and identifying where those critical rare earth elements are in Alaska. We've got one focused on oil and gas, making it easier and more innovative for extracting heavy oil. We've got one focused on alternative energy and the potential of micronuclear, which is essentially a really big nuclear powered battery, all self-contained, about the size of a trailer truck. Another one we're very excited about is in the mariculture areas. So this one is, what we're trying to do is focus our highest priorities on those things that are going to be game changers for the economy. That also means that we can connect people to jobs, and looking at employers, and how do we work simultaneously, because we're with the infrastructure package coming and 30,000 fewer adults working in Alaska and lower graduating classes. We are all in need of people working. So I think a lot of what we're going to be having to do is have people going to school and working at the same time, because there's such a need, and we have the programs and the pathways that accommodate that. So pretty exciting. Of course, I should turn over this one to Pearl to talk about advancing the Alaska Native Success Initiative. Last fall, the board passed our Alaska Native Success Strategic Plan. We're very excited about the attention all of our universities have on advancing our faculty and staff and student populations, so they represent our state as a whole. But the energy on the collective energy across the system on this initiative is fabulous, and I thank Pearl Brower for her leadership. It's really been a tremendous advance. I want to talk a little bit, I won't talk about all of these, but I want to hit on the increased fisheries and ocean science presence in Southeast Alaska. And this one is, directly focused on economic and jobs for the Southeast area. And there's a mariculture conference coming up on the 12th of April. But the fisheries and ocean sciences programs that Southeast has at the undergraduate level, it couples with the graduate level courses at University of Alaska Fairbanks. But there's also fisheries tech and maritime instruction here. And so it's really focused on the broad breadth of workforce needed in the fisheries and ocean sciences arena. Our Alaska College of Education Consortium is reaping benefits in our teachers, in our teacher training programs. We've highlighted all 3 of our schools of education and are collectively recruiting for teachers. And again, with highlighting all 3 programs, there's different pathways. So a person who's coming right out of school and wants to be an elementary ed teacher, they have the option of on campus face-to-face, or they have an option of distance. If they are already working, have a 4-year degree, there's 1-year programs for them to get a master's so they can teach at secondary level. So there's a website we have out there called teachalaska.org, and I invite you to check it out. And last, I want to hit on this revised business models for efficiency and modernization. One of our big efforts this year is to secure the funding legislatively for revamping our student information system. And the student information system was a system that I was actually managing the programmers in 1995 when we put it in. So we need to modernize our front-facing student IT system, and we're excited about moving forward on that. So this right here, this slide, this is where we're pointed as an institution, and look forward to working with everybody to partner to make that work. In addition, what we did is we put together our targets for the next 5 years to demonstrate that we will reach the goals that we've set. And so to me, this is our accountability. This is our accountability to the state. This is our accountability to our partners. Graduation rate and student retention rate are some of our most aggressive, capturing our UA scholars. I think this group knows more than most groups. Our biggest competitor is not students going out of state. If you look at the data, about the same proportion of students go out of state that have consistently. Our biggest competitor are people choosing not to go to college. And the jobs that are out there require training, not necessarily a 4-year degree, but post-secondary training for sure. I read a statistic of in March, this last March, there was 900,000 jobs added to the economy in March. So as we were coming out of COVID, 900,000 jobs added to the economy. Only 7,000 of those 900,000, less than 1%, didn't require post-secondary education. So the jobs that are coming back are all require that education. And I think getting that news out, that some training, and again, we have those stacked pathways across our university that people can start with a 1-year degree or certificate and go on to get their associates or baccalaureate over time once they see it's possible and how it advances their career. And operating effectively, where we have our most aggressive targets is in our promoting diversity and inclusion for students, faculty, and staff. And this is largely because of the time and effort we spent on the strategic plan for Alaska Native success. And if we do this right, our faculty, staff, and student populations will represent the population of our state. And when we do that, we're not looking for the Alaska Native students to be just in Alaska Native programs. We need Alaska Native accountants, engineers, financiers, etc. And so we want the representation in every one of our programs for faculty, staff, students to represent our population. With that, I'm open for questions and really appreciated the time.
Thank you so much, President Pitney. We have a couple of questions in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and just read them off. And we're great. We have about 10 minutes, so this is perfect. Is there any effort to bring back the BA in early childhood education at UAA? The state is sorely lacking that program, and it's a significant need.
The board has approved the addition of the baccalaureate in early childhood education, our Board of Regents. It is right now at the Board of Education, and we are optimistic that that will be passed, and people who are in the associates of early childhood right now would have a pathway into that baccalaureate degree. And that would, again, be added to that suite of education licensure programs in the teachalaska.org catalog that capitalizes on the resources from all three of our universities for the importance of teachers.
Great, thank you, President Pitney. The second question is, I see a trend of tribal education and tribal education compacting among Native American and Alaska Native tribes. And what is UA doing to prepare or assist?
Well, I think the Alaska Native Success Initiative really brought people together, as we are a minority serving institution, and that is very supportive. In terms of the tribal, as entities want to build a tribal college, we are here and open to assist. And in fact, I think when Ilisavik started, the university shared its information system so that they didn't have to, they had an information system that they could use as they started up, and expertise on accreditations and the like. So definitely here to assist. Our institutions will partner, but I think as the University of Alaska, it probably wouldn't be going in as a tribal entity, but certainly every door that students have to access higher education is necessary in our state. And if a tribal entity can create a successful pathway into higher education, that's just better for all of us. So maybe more as a partnering, and Pearl, maybe you could say more about how you feel about that.
Yeah, absolutely, President Pitney. I was just going to add, we've been watching the conversation very closely and been in conversation specifically with Alaska Federation of Natives on the efforts that they are engaging in support of tribal compacting. I think the biggest thing right now is that, just as President Pitney said, absolutely wanting to partner and be a part of the conversation, but wanting to let, as the state's university system, wanting to let the tribes work through the process and make sure that we're there to support and assist as they determine what direction they're going to take. I would also say that Cook Inlet Tribal Council is also looking at how they're going to support, and they are, from what I understand, they're going to be convening kind of a work group in relation to this, and we may have somebody on that might know a little more about that. But we're also kind of as a partner in that and in that plan for that conversation as well. So definitely excited for what that will mean, and really thinking, I think one of the ways we can be a good partner in that is thinking about creating our college going culture across the state, something that we lack. And we want not only, and it isn't only, you know, in rural areas, but it is all across Alaska. We don't really have a college going culture, and we all, I think, are important stakeholders in that and can help support those efforts, because the more connection I think our residents have with higher education institutions, the closer we'll get to our goal of 65 by 2025. So really important pieces in that area of partnership. Thank you, President Pitney.
Yeah, and you know, when I was talking about availability of financial aid, when we were talking about increasing student enrollment, I didn't mention that each of the regional corporations provide scholarships to their shareholders, and that is also a tremendous asset for Alaskans' post-secondary access. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. We probably have time for one more question. And just a note, if you could also just ask it yourself if you want to raise your hand in the chat, or put a question, or raise your hand on the screen, put a question in the chat here. Oh, and there was just another comment about Native organizations also provide scholarships. Absolutely. I think one of the greatest things about Alaska is that there are so many opportunities for scholarship funding for students across the board. And I know, and maybe President Pitney, you might want to address this too, but just how focused the universities, all three of our universities, are on making sure that college is affordable for our students, and rethinking right now, there's some conversations about how do we rethink tuition. And I don't know, President Pitney, if you want to address any of that, but.
Right. So the board has a ad hoc committee on tuition, and we have three very different universities. We've got UAF is our Alaska's Research University, UAA is Open Comprehensive, UAS is our regional university. In the higher education market, those compete for a different student. Students look for a particular experience. They often look for colleges that are like that. And so the competition isn't between each of those. It's really between like experiences for students. And so we're talking about differentiating tuition. So the research university tuition is more similar to other research universities where there's a level of support. And then keeping the comprehensive open access university tuition at the comprehensive level, and then the regional level. Also, by having this opportunity to differentiate the tuition where we used to have it very, very much the same, we can decouple our community college tuition from our university level tuition. And what we have, but each of our universities, unlike other places, each of our universities have the responsibility from that very entry level certificate, vocational, all the way through graduate programs. As we think about the community college tuition and making college more accessible, by having the differentiation, we can keep that lower division, or that community college program tuition at a lower rate. And so we're really working on that differentiation, and all the while knowing that tuition is a big share of the revenue model of the university. So it's a balance, but we really do want to bring our community campus and community college program tuitions more in line with what's seen outside, at the same time having our tuition at the research university more aligned with research universities and other places.
Fantastic. Well, it was great lead in because day 2 of our conference is all about accessibility and day 3 is all about flexibility. So thanks, President Pitney, because everybody better come back for day 2 and 3 to hear more about those 2 items. President Pitney, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being with us today. And we really appreciate your time and the words and sharing with us goals and measures of the university. I, for one, am really excited about the future and about your leadership there. One thing I want to make sure everyone knows, and I'm going to stick in the chat, is that President Pitney will be giving the State of the University address on Thursday at noon. So right as we close our conference, we can just shift into President Pitney's State of the University. And you'll be giving that from Juneau, I believe, but it'll be broadcast. So there's the web link right there if anybody wants to get that on their calendar. So thank you so much, President Pitney. Really appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you, and I appreciate all of what you are doing to get our Alaska College going culture moving. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. At that point, I will transition to Julia.
Hi there. I have the honor to introduce Janelle Vanas. She is serving as the secretary in the AlaskaCAN network and on the board, and she is representing a secondary education seat. Janelle Vanas has served in Alaska education for over 25 years. Currently, she's a superintendent of Mount Edgecombe High School, and Janelle has focused much of her career in secondary education and helping underserved and low-income populations successfully prepare for post-secondary transitions. Much of the college-going culture work Janelle has engaged in is aligned with redefining READY research and includes multiple pathways through high school courses, building student goal setting and accuracy in self-assessment, providing scaffold ways for students to reach highly rigorous college prep coursework, and early integration of college navigation skills, particularly targeting first-generation students. Janelle believes both an understanding of cultural relevance and a deep look at current data is essential to meeting the 65 by 2025 goal. And we welcome Janelle.
Well, thank you. All of a sudden it flipped and I missed my microphone. So I really appreciate that. And what I want to do today is really bring us back to our keynote speaker. So we're going to just talk a little bit. I'm going to reference a few things from some of my own research and some of my own work, but I really want us to kind of get back into that really rich information we got from Mandy Savitz-Romer. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're gonna just talk about maybe 15 to 20 minutes, and then we're going to get a chance to get into some regional groups. So I want you to just be thinking about, as I talk, just thinking about what we heard this morning and how it fits within your own context. So I think just the real key theme that we heard from Mandy this morning is that building that identity, that college going identity, but just really exploring your own personal identity is part of college readiness. And I can share that when I did my own research, I just, recently have finished a doctorate program and was specifically looking at readiness for Alaska Native students, because it has been our slippery fish. I've been in Alaska for a long time, and we've really wanted to see an increase in college readiness overall, but we've often been able to look at our Alaska Native students and see that that is a group that we're not succeeding. And we just listened to President Pitney talk about their university and their attempts to do that. So that's kind of what my research targeted, was specifically Alaska and Alaska Native students. But what came very clear is the very piece that Mandy talked about, and that is the key that identity plays in that readiness. So I just want to, again, throughout what I want to talk about this morning, just thinking about what we heard and how that might play out in our context and our communities and with our students, and how that approach works. So here's a couple of jewels. I had this out while I was listening to Mandy this morning and trying to just capture some of what I thought was just some real key jewels that she said. Having information does not necessarily lead to action. So, you know, the solution is not just, oh, they need more information. And we know that. Really exploring that idea of who am I for students. I love that example of that doesn't just mean bring them to a college, because you know you could be exposed to a Broadway show. It doesn't mean that you think you can get up there and act. And some things that I think really resonate with how we approach students and some of the things we've seen is that conflicting feeling of breaking away, or that concern that moving up means moving out. And you know, exploring what that means to identity. She also mentioned that for a lot of kids that ultimately want to give back to their community, they don't necessarily know that right away. It's after they go off. So I was really thinking about that is if you've worked in rural Alaska in particular, you might have heard kids say, I want to leave. And so then you're supporting that idea. But the risk is if college means moving up and moving out or breaking away, and they go off to college and they realize that they're really connected to their community and they don't want to break away, then maybe that creates a drawback or creates a dropout instead of us really building, regardless of whether they're saying they want to stay in the village or not, building that going off to college can be very aligned with serving your community, your village, your home. So those are a couple of the things that I was thinking. I'm just going to invite in the chat. I'm going to keep going because we are going to have time to be in a group, but I'm going to invite in the chat if there's anything that is just jumping at you today, thinking about Mandy's comments, and thinking about, gosh, it made me think about this in my context. So go ahead and feel free to explore that. So one of the things that in my exploring how we might really do this well, how might we rethink about college readiness in Alaska, I ultimately came up with, we need to work on academic preparation. What we know is we have too few of our kids, particularly our Alaska Native kids, accessing those courses, those opportunities that help kids feel and be academically prepared. So that's something we got to work on. We have to work on that college system and navigation and how you get there and how you get your FAFSA completed and all those things. We've talked about that too. But the part that has not been in a lot of models before is that self-identity and that cultural identity. And then understanding that there's some real overlap, that there may be, and I think we really heard this from Mandy, there may be some self-identity stuff that is a barrier to that academic preparation. There also might be some strength, if we go from a strength-based place, where it could be an asset for academic preparation. Once we start really inviting Native ways of thinking and knowing into that academic setting, it could actually really build some strength. So in listening to Mandy, I thought, you know, it's that building, as she describes the way people think, students think, in that envisioning and believing, that's really at the center. So if we're going to have all of this work at the core as kids approach their academic preparation, as they approach navigating through the systems, as they approach their own self-identity exploration, really helping them not just envision those things for themselves, but really exploring what it means and believing that you can do that. So one piece that Mandy may not have touched on that I thought was worth bringing up is a specific concept of transculturation, is what this one Huffman researcher described it as, after doing a lot of research with Native American students who had been successful in college and some that had not, and kind of what happens. And he identified kind of these stages that typically students will go off to college and initially feel a sense of alienation. And if they don't move through the stages from there, they tend to drop out. The next stage is a stage he calls self-discovery, and that's where they're still there and they're discovering there's a personal strength that they can draw upon from their culture. And then the next one is realignment. So this is where, wow, I actually can relate. Even if I have to code shift, I can rely a little bit on my culture as an emotional anchor to actually make sense of both of these settings. And the last one is participation, and that's when a person feels fully comfortable in using their culture and heritage as a source of strength. Often you'll see people who've shifted into this stage a little bit more comfortable to share and build other people's capacity and their understanding as well. So one of the things that I think is aligned with looking at this work, as well as Mandy's, is if we can, even before kids go off to college, start working and building up to that stage of self-discovery, we might actually be able to support a better chance at persistence at college. Because it's that alienation stage that really, really causes a lot of risk for kids to, or young adults at that point, to feel like that they need to go home. So a couple of research pieces that I think are also critical as I shift my mind from what I hear from Mandy and putting it into our context and understanding, the cultural piece, is there's some really great research. And this top one I thought was just really powerful. And that is that Native students who are able to draw strength from their cultural identity on college campus are more likely to succeed in their academic pursuits. And I think this is the really interesting part, than those kids that have gone off and, have worked on their cultural assimilation to feel like they fit in. Or those that are, just never establish a level of comfort. And I think that's really key as we look at a little bit of historical understanding of schools, is the approach for a very long time had been, to really help kids, to assimilate. And the idea is, well, here's what it's going to be like at college, and you need to, this is what college students act like, and here's what, and of course, that was really a reflection of a very white middle class expectation. So this data shares that really didn't work. Now, we didn't need this data to tell us that didn't work, but it is still really powerful data. And then another piece of data I found that I think is really, really powerful is to understand that this identity is not just warm and fuzzy. Students who progress to identifying culture identity as a strength actually had higher GPAs in college. So Mandy talked a little bit about motivation. And she said something like, and I was writing these down while she said it, so I might not be exactly, but she said the goals we set and the why we set them are important, right? So we need to set goals, but we need to understand the why those goals matter to us. And if the why is not well established, the goal does not stick. So again, in looking at, we have the highest number, Alaska has the highest number of people with some college but no degree. So we know people are going off and having that goal. They're raising their hand, I want to go to college, but then whatever that motivation piece isn't sticking. So thinking a little bit more for our folks, our kiddos, what is that true motivation? So here's a couple other just pieces of I think, gems from some of my own research. That high school counselors tend to draw upon career goals and American values of capitalism in advertising, in advising students. So Mandy put up that chart of here, you know, how much money do you want to make and that kind of stuff, which is classically things that we provide to students. But it doesn't stick. That's not the motivation that sticks. What sticks for Alaska Native students is they're really motivated by their families and their home communities. Some other research found that family and giving back to their tribal communities as the top 2 factors. So that's not one factor. Both of those are 1 and 2 when the students are interviewed. Mandy mentioned the 60% for low income. I think what this data shares is that when we're working with Alaska Native students, it's even greater of a part of their motivation. So again, I think this can really help us in when we're helping kids figure out what their goals are, is really helping them explore their why. Because if your why is to give back to your community and you go off and you found out, oh, you know what, I really didn't like chemistry. I don't want to be, you know, a nurse if that's what I went off to go off and do initially. If your why is to serve your community, there's lots of plan Bs that can still do that. But if we sent them off because, oh, you want to be a nurse, and then they find out they don't, there's that motivation is gone, and it's not really true to themselves anyway. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but if you're at all interested in some of my research, I've got rethinkingreadiness.com, and on there is an assessment that high schools can use to kind of see where they're at in kind of thinking more culturally relevant in their college readiness model. So you guys are welcome to that. And I just wanted to share that there's a group in Southeast that's really thinking in these broader terms, and how can we consider a bridging framework for middle and high school students that's a little bit more all-encompassing, with this idea of identity and building that identity as core and as equal with the navigation and academic pieces. Okay. So with that, we're going to start shifting into our regional groups so that you guys get a chance to talk about that. So you're going to be placed in a regional group. There are questions on a Jamboard, and these questions you're going to see throughout our conference. But think about what Mandy shared and some of your local concepts and your local context, and think, as a regional group, what's the value of meeting together? And I like to think of that as, what can we do together? So you might want to be thinking about that as a regional group, or what you can share with each other that is helpful. And then the next question is there another group doing this work? Who are they? Are there partner opportunities? If there's not in your region, is it something you can convene and start working on that work? If that's true, start thinking about, when could we meet, or what are the shared goals, so that this time with your region, you really are kind of building your next steps. Are there any questions before we push you all off into your regional groups?
Hi, Janelle. I was just going to add that when you click on the Jamboard link, you'll find your region, and there'll be 2 questions per page. So there'll be, I believe, 2 pages per region. And they're all actually color coded to make it a little easier visually to find as well.
Okay, and they will be placed in a group. They don't have to self-select a group. Am I correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Yep. That's why we had everybody write their region. So if you haven't yet done that, you'll want to take a quick moment to do that. But I think most folks have done that.
Okay.
And this is Kathy. The regional breakout rooms are all set. and I will go ahead and open them. You will be put into your room. You will have 30 minutes and will be given a notice of when that is closing, and you'll have 1 minute to wrap up your conversations and then come back into the main room. And I will be monitoring the main room in case somebody gets bumped.
Yeah. And Kathy, thanks for mentioning that, because I should give you all a warning that when we do come back, we'll ask for just a very short report out from groups. We probably can't do every group, but think of that as maybe some sort of very concise share out.
Yeah, you'll want to have a scribe and a presenter when you get into your groups.
Okay, I'm going to hit open all rooms. We'll see you all in 30 minutes.
Thanks, Kathy.
Dominica, I'm pausing the recording during the breakout sessions. Please help me remember to start it again.
Sounds good, Kathy.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. We just have about 10 minutes, if that. Let's see, let me just double check my time. Yeah, about 9 to 10 minutes, just for a little bit of a report out. So let me just start with a little bit of volunteer. Is there a region that's willing to volunteer there? I see a hand up from the Anchorage Matt Sue. So
Would that be mine, Janelle?
Yes, I believe so.
So we had lots of post-secondary partners in our group, but we also had school districts with us too. And so we like the idea of being able to meet as a regional network, to be able to collaborate and share resources, know what the other hand is doing, like what's going on, and maybe if we tried an initiative and maybe we weren't sure if it worked, maybe expanding it out, seeing if they also tried it so we can get a little bit bigger sample set. And then we didn't just use the word collaborate, we used the word calibrate so that we can adjust things and see what's working in those areas. Some of the other areas we looked at, Connect Tribe is partnering with the school district here in the Matsu to bring cultural learning together with career ready learning. And so we're looking forward to seeing where that goes. They've been working at it a couple months. And we see this work being done too with the UA statewide work teams in their different areas. And then our group was really interested in meeting in person and midsummer, because we had a lot of people who, like we said, did work for post-secondary. And so something mid-June through July, that works for the apprenticeships, that works for the post-secondaries as well. And some shared goals would be to know what other agencies are working at, kind of starting out with that roundtable approach. Is it something we can piggyback on, pull resources so that maybe we can use some other resources to focus on other things that are working, and see what's offered by our post-secondary partners. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you. And for those of you who like a little bit of a visual, when you're on your Jamboard, you can, go ahead and go forward or backwards so you can look at that region. Is there another region willing to raise their hand, or I'll call on you if nobody volunteers? Let's see. How about the northern region? Are you guys willing to share?
Hi, okay, so there was only 4 of us, and 3 of them will be here in Iqaluit at Iqaluit. So we were done pretty quick. We talked about how valuable it is to stay connected with the northern region. So the northern region has the North Slope, the Northwest region, and the Norton Sound area. And we're pretty vast, and sometimes it could be hard to connect with everybody. But we were able to talk about the value it would be and how valuable it would be for our regions to get connected and be able to network with each other. We also talked about who is doing this already. The only thing that we were able to talk about is in the North Slope, there is a quadrilateral team that consists of the regional tribe, the North Slope Borough, the school district, and Iqaluit to talk about student outcomes. And so that was one of the things. We talked about the campuses that are in Nome and Cots and how we can connect with them and be able to have a larger force in the northern region, we talked about how we really need to strengthen the northern region to kind of see more of a college goings and be part of that 65 for 2025. We skipped 3 because there's only 3 of us, and well, 4 of us, but 3 of us are at Iqaluit, so we meet daily anyways. Shared goals are redefining what success is. Sometimes at least in our region, that self-identity factor is really important. Increasing pathways to our home. We talked about, the campuses that are in the North Slope, the Northwest Arctic, and the Norton Sound area, that there is campuses, and what can we do to create that gateway? And what are our identity barriers to going to college? Tabra, I'm done.
Well, thank you very much. How about the interior? Are you willing to share?
I am. I was actually going to say I could go next. So we had a small but mighty group as well, mostly post-secondary folks, and then Tanana Chiefs Conference. We've never had a group before. I know that's something that's been talked about with AlaskaCAN. And kind of putting together a regional group that consists of not only post-secondary educational partners, but also folks from industry as well, to kind of have this collaborative conversation around how we all can help each other, essentially, and how we can help folks within the community for those different pathways that may be available. Also bringing everyone together is sharing that knowledge, giving those partnerships. I loved what was said earlier too, that collaboration, but I forget what the word was used by Julia. And so essentially making sure that we're all being good partners together. We do have some groups that have some small, things coming together, but, kind of reaching out to those groups. So Chamber is one, the Education Committee. For those of you that may attend Dave Reese monthly meeting, kind of doing something similar to that of bringing some folks together. Something that was mentioned is for folks, it's and I can totally feel this as well, Tanana Chiefs, Dina mentioned this, that it's sometimes hard to reach out to everyone. And so talking about, putting together a listserv for our region so that we can get that word out to multiple partners. And then what else am I missing? Having a small core group come together monthly, and then maybe doing something quarterly that, has, an invited person to speak, those kinds of things. And I think I covered everything.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks. So next I'm going to ask the Southwest group, but I have to admit that I wasn't very careful in my reading, and I was contributing to Southwest thinking it was contributing to the Southeast. So my Southeast partners, when you asked me to put a sticky, I really was putting a sticky. I was just giving it to Southwest. And if you know me, I used to live in Southwest and I love it. So maybe I just was, couldn't help myself, but contribute. But Southwest, can you share?
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing with us. So some of the values and strengths that we identified in our region is there's a lot of resources to share, both with the youth and the adults. They mentioned the strength of the Bristol Bay Way and how that has a lot of power in those words. There's a lot of training opportunities through the different BBs and the Bristol Bay campus that are available for students and adults. Butchie and Angela talked about a few different organizations that are available. They had a lot of depth and knowledge about those organizations. One of the goals that we had talked about is working on connecting the dots. Like Amy just said, there's a lot of resources in our region, and some of them, might be hard for students and staff, or students and adults, to kind of understand what all is there. There's just so much there. And so working on a way to kind of condense and make an obtainable resource for everyone might be useful.
Excellent, thank you. So I think we're out of time, so I'm going to have to, unfortunately, Tesla said she would do Southeast, but we're going to run out of time, and just want to wrap it up. I hope you guys all really enjoyed Mandy, and just thinking about the context within your own region, and just looking at the Jamboards, it looks like the regional work already started some really important conversations. So just want to thank you all. And I will be handing it off and back to Barbara.
All right, thank you so much. So I have the honor of introducing our next sponsor moment. This will be Lael Oldmixon. She is the Executive Director of Alaska 529 and the UA Scholars Program, and is based in Fairbanks, Alaska. Alaska 529 partners with ACPE in early college and career exploration, such as I Know I Can and Kids to College. And Lael, I'll let you take over.
Thanks so much, Barbara. Hi, everyone. It is so great to see so many folks here. It's, gosh, I feel like it's been a minute since I've seen folks involved in the network. Back when the network was started, Alaska 529 and I were very involved at the beginning, and we've been involved as a sponsor with AlaskaCAN for several years. So happy to be here, happy to sponsor, and just want to tell you a little bit about Alaska 529 and some of the really exciting things that we're doing. Some of you may also know me. I recognized a lot of folks who are involved with the UA Scholars Program. My other hat is as the director of the UA Scholars Program. I've been here with Alaska 529 and the Scholars Program for about 9 years. Before that, I was with UAF in the Office of Admissions and was a colleague of Amy Brister's. So first, I guess before I begin, I want to get a sense for where people are in their knowledge about Alaska 529. So if I could just ask everybody to do me a big favor, and in the chat, can you, if you are somebody that is very familiar with Alaska 529, can you just put a comment that says, I'm familiar? And then if you've heard our name before, but you're not familiar with us really, like what we do, can you just put something in the comment that says, I've heard your name? And then if you have no idea who we are or what we do, and you've maybe never heard our name, can you say, tell me more? Okay, this is very helpful for me because before I dive in, I want to make sure I'm telling you what you need to know. It does look like there are a few people who are not as familiar, and then there are some that have heard our name, and then there are some folks who are more familiar. So, you know, sort of typical spectrum of knowledge about Alaska 529. So a couple of ways that people know about us, right? We used to be known as the UA College Savings Plan. We changed our name in 2019, and that long history that we've had, we've been embedded within the University of Alaska since the 90s. We were advanced college tuition, where people could prepay their tuition at the University of Alaska and guarantee that their tuition would be there. In the 2001, we converted to a sort of traditional college savings plan. We partnered with T. Rowe Price, our program manager. They do the investments and the backroom operations on our behalf, and also the bulk of our marketing. We adopted the name UA College Savings Plan at that time in 2001. And then in 2019, we changed our name to Alaska 529 to be more representative of all of the different ways that you can use a 529 account, and truly represent the flexibility that the plan has. So a 529 account is a tax advantaged way to save for future education for yourself, for a child, for a loved one. You really can open an account for anybody. And those monies are invested we have 15 portfolios, and you get to pick how you want to invest your money in terms of the portfolio setup. And folks who want to choose something that's more like a retirement account, where it's age-based or target-based, we have enrollment-based portfolios where you can say, okay, my kiddo's going to enroll in 2027, and that's the strategy that I want to take. It starts out more investing in stocks and equities, and then it gets more conservative as the child approaches their enrollment date. We have one really special portfolio called the University of Alaska portfolio that kind of took the place of our advanced college tuition. It is an investment, it is a balanced portfolio, and what we have attached to that specific portfolio is the tuition value guarantee. So we guarantee that your investments will keep up with tuition inflation, and if it doesn't, we will make up the difference. And by we, I mean the Education Trust of Alaska, which is the trustee over our 529 plan. That's a huge benefit to Alaskans, and it's a huge benefit to actually anybody invested in the UA, the University of Alaska portfolio. But it also, like all of our portfolios, can be used at any college or university in the country that is an eligible school, right? So vocational, technical, 2-year, 4-year PhDs, master's degrees who accept federal financial aid. So the usage of 529s is fairly broad and fairly flexible, and can be, again, like I said, you can invest for anyone, including yourself. And so that little background there, I don't know if that helped folks to kind of understand what the 529 is, but you may also know us and recognize us from the PFD. We are one of the questions on the PFD. I think they refer to us as like an elective option. And so you can check the box to put half of your PFD into an Alaska 529 account. You can also direct deposit the other half of your PFD if you so chose, to put your full PFD into an Alaska 529 account. And your or your child's PFD. There are a number of ways that you can go about doing it. And when you do that, you automatically get entered for our $25,000 scholarship account giveaway. And last year's winner was a young lady who was from Kotzebue, and our Northwest campus assisted us with giving the award out to our winner, which was very exciting. And we it's one of my favorite days of the year to do that particular account giveaway. So automatically entered when you check the box. So why are we doing this? Why are we here? Why do we have this 529 account option for families in Alaska? The quick and dirty is that every single state except for one in the country offers a 529 investment option. They're municipal securities, so they're offered by either state agencies or universities or education arms of the state. And for us, the legislature housed Alaska 529 within the University of Alaska because they and the university really felt like the message was, we want you to save for future education, and perhaps there will be a pipeline to the University of oh, Sarah, that's amazing. I want to talk to you more about that. Maybe there will be a pipeline to the University of Alaska, and also to inspire young people to think, maybe I can consider myself going on to future education or future educational pursuits. Our goal is to change the mindset of young people in Alaska to a when I go to college instead of an if I go to college. And I know that that's something that this network really believes in too. We know that Alaska's college going culture or post-secondary going culture is critical to the infrastructure here in Alaska in building a trained, skilled, and educated workforce. And so we also know, because of the research that's been done nationally, that children with savings accounts set aside for post-secondary education are more likely to go on to post-secondary education. And so a ton of research has been done on this, and states across the country are really investing in these, the idea that it's important that children have that commitment up front, that having a savings account sets that expectation that when you go to college, you can use these dollars. Research at the Washington University St. Louis has also shown that students who have $500 or more, or kids who have $500 or more, are also 4 times more likely to graduate with a credential. So that's fairly significant. So we're sitting here in Alaska 529, and we've been asking ourselves, okay, we have 33,000 plus minus account holders, unique account holders in the state. And each of those account holders has a little less than 2 accounts or beneficiaries each connected to them. And I think we all know there are more people than that in Alaska, and a lot more young people. And so our question is, how do we get accounts into the hands of all of the children in Alaska so that we can set that expectation when they go to college or when they do post-secondary workforce development training, instead of the if I can do it. Providing the affordability, the leverage, the ability to choose where they want to go and how they can do it without taking out massive student loans. And that's really the objective, is to empower families to make those choices. So I guess one question that I have for you all is, if you were to answer that question, what would it take to get a 529 account opened for every child in Alaska? What do you think it would take? And I've already told you, we have a partnership with the PFD, the Department of Revenue, where people can automatically check the box. And we do get about 14,000 individuals each year who do check the box. It goes up every single year. So that's one tool that we've been leveraging. In the chat, if you have any personal thoughts on it, I'd love to see your thoughts. But I'm going to tell you that in addition to our PFD, we've thought about this for a long time, for years and years, and we're in a position at this point where we have partnered with a number of organizations, including ACPE, for a long time. We have partnered with Lemonade Day, somebody put in there, which is part of the Small Business Economic Development Corporation. We have partnered with youth soccer. We've partnered with youth hockey. We have partnered with chambers of commerce, with young professionals. We've really worked hard to get into a place where folks recognize our name as an everyday brand, as an everyday part of their understanding of 529s. So, that has laid a nice groundwork. We are seeing more and more people open accounts for their young children every single year. But this year, what we have decided to do, and you guys are first ears on this, what we've decided to do is launch an incentive program to hopefully incentivize families to take the plunge and to open the accounts. So we know how easy it is to check the box and put half the PFD in, but a lot of people, they say, like, I need that money right now. We want to encourage people to open the accounts. It's a minimum of $25. So anybody that opens a new account, a unique account with a unique beneficiary, so brand new relationship with us, up to 5,000 new unique account relationships, with a minimum of $25, will kick in $250. So each year we're going to be doing that. And so up to the first 5,000. And just to kind of give you guys a baseline number, for this year, we get about 3,000 new accounts each year. So we're really hoping to ramp that up this year. We also recognize that we have a lot of people who already are account holders. And so the idea of opening the new account is great, but we also want people to reach their goals, have enough money to pay for their educational pursuits, right? So we also will be incentivizing individuals who set up systematic savings. And by systematic savings, I mean, I set up a bank account to automatically put $25 a month into my 529 account. So that can be new account holders, or it can be existing account holders. And for those folks who do it for, more than 6 months in the year, they'll get $50 also added into their account. And then for folks who do direct deposit from their payroll, so if I get my paycheck from the university, I put $25 a month toward my child's 529 account, I'll get another $50. And so, in theory, that's all going to add up. You know, that person is saving systematically, so they're going to have the benefit of their own savings, and then we're going to kick in an additional contribution, and we're going to do that every year that person is participating in those systematic savings mechanisms. So we're really excited about doing that. We're really excited about launching this program. And we want to partner with as many individuals and organizations as are willing to invite us in the door to share this news and to talk about Alaska 529. This network is so strong. We have built so many amazing connections over the years with you all. And so if you do have a desire to have us come and speak with you, we would absolutely be delighted to do so. And Janelle, I absolutely love that comment that you made, the gifting to 529 accounts. Actually, the really good news, I was just looking at our gifting numbers for this year. We were up 130% in gifting. So we are really working hard on that gifting element. We have a platform called Go Tuition, where families who set up an account can send a link to all of their friends and family, and they can log in and make kind of a social contribution. So that is one thing that we are working really hard at, making sure it's as accessible as possible to the whole family, because it can be a whole family type of experience. And for baby showers, you know, a great gift is to kick off that 529 account for a child. And for birthdays, a great gift can be $25 into a 529 account. For graduation gifts, $100 into a 529 account. I mean, there's every opportunity you can get. Yes, I love that, Janelle. And I also agree, Emily, with the more conversations with families about their hopes and dreams early on, and that's definitely something that we want to do as well. Again, if you want to have us come in and talk with your stakeholders or your folks that you're connected with, we would be happy to meet with you. I think I've overstayed my welcome, so I am going to go, but it's so great to be here. I appreciate all of the amazing work you all do, and I look forward to partnering with you.
Thank you so much, Lael. Thank you for sharing your information. That sounds great. So Shelley is going to do a really quick wrap up because we are about out of time. Go ahead, Shelley.
Yes, well, I just want to thank everyone. Thank you, Lael, for sharing such important information, for your partnerships with I Know I Can and Kids to College. We really appreciate everything that you do with your organization. And thanks to everyone else for all of your participation. So many good conversations and great information and ideas today. There's not time to do highlights and wrap ups from today, but we are going to do that tomorrow. And tomorrow, just to give you a quick idea about what tomorrow looks like, we will get started right at 8:30 again, kicking the day off. You will want to do the same thing tomorrow, changing your name to include the region. And then we'll have our keynote speaker, Dwayne Mays, the Director of Vocational Rehab. We will have a panel discussing different approaches to accessibility in Alaska, where we have 3 panelists, and we'll be able to hear from them, do some Q&A. There'll be a breakout session following the panel. And then we're also going to hear from a few of our other conference sponsors like we did today. And tomorrow we get to hear from some of our board candidates and have their introductions before we all have the opportunity to vote on the nominees for the new board seats. So that's just a quick summary of some of the things for tomorrow. And thank you guys all so much for your time and contributions. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 8:30.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Great job, everybody.
Thank you.